Yes.
Namaste everyone. A very warm good evening to all. So today on the occasion of World Heritage Day, we have organized an e-lecture on the topic safeguarding cultural heritage, and our today's resource person is Marin Anilji. I take this opportunity to warmly welcome her to the platform of the history enthusiasts. I also take this opportunity to welcome our honorary president, Nandan Shastri ji, and founder president of the history enthusiasts, Miss Manali Mumaya, and of course, very importantly, all our audience who are joining us today through this session, all our core committee members, advisory members also. So now I request Ms. Manali Momaya to briefly introduce our today's resource person, uh, Merin Anilji. Over to you, Manali.
Thank you very much, Nadi, for the warm welcome. And good evening once again, everyone. On the occasion of World Heritage Day, first of all, happy World Heritage Day to everyone. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all again on behalf of the history enthusiasts. Heritage, as we often say, it's not merely what we inherit, it is what we choose to protect, what we choose to preserve, and to pass on to the next generation. And in times marked by both natural disasters and human conflict that we are seeing today, the question of safeguarding our cultural legacy becomes not just relevant but urgent. It becomes very something that is very critical current in our current day-to-day lives, because without that we will not have any heritage left to pass on to the next generations. Today's lecture, Safeguarding Cultural Heritage from Disasters and Conflict, invites us to reflect on this responsibility, not just as an abstract idea, but as a lived professional practice. It is now my privilege to introduce our resource person for today's evening, Ms. Merin Anil. She holds a bachelor's degree in history honors from University of Delhi and a master's degree in art conservation from National Museum Institute. She has an extensive and hands-on career in conservation, having worked with Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage (INTAC), New Delhi from 2013 to 2021. As a conservator, she has been deeply involved in the examination, documentation, and conservation of a wide range of art objects, ranging from canvas paintings and polychrome objects to wall paintings and metals. Her work has taken her across diverse and challenging sites, including the conservation of wall paintings in Ladakh at Mangyu, Chemde, and Bodh Kharbu, as well as documentation projects in Daman and Diu. She has also coordinated significant conservation projects at the Kirti Mandir wall painting conservation in Baroda, the Bethany Chapel conservation project in Mangalore, and work on the collections of Museum of Christian Art in Old Goa. Beyond fieldwork, Ms. Anil has been actively engaged in outreach, conducting seminars, workshops, and capacity building programs. In 2017, she was awarded the prestigious Indian Conservation Fellowship, which took her to SRAL Netherlands for advanced training. She later worked as a senior conservator with the Keralam Museum on painting conservation projects and currently serves as the Delhi Center Coordinate at the INTAC Conservation Institute. Her work sits at the intersection of science, history, and care, where preservation is not just technical, it is deeply ethical. So with this, I invite once again Ms. Merin Anil to deliver her lecture. Thank you everyone for listening to me, and over to you, ma'am. We look forward to this very interesting lecture.
Thank you for the very warm invite. There's an echo there. Is it?
Yeah, I'm muting this.
Oh, okay. All right. Today, when we are celebrating the World Heritage Day, so it's a very good platform where I have been called in, and I'm so grateful for the history enthusiasts to invite me for the talk. And surely, it's a very like in the situation we are or the world we are right now. this topic, safeguarding cultural heritage, is a very important aspect or important concern everyone has. Like right now we are seeing war across worlds, and then we are also having a lot of episodes where there are natural disaster, floods, there are episodes of fire, and many cultural heritage sites have been affected by them. So at this point of time, we need to have a discussion where we can have an idea, or like how we can safeguard our cultural heritage without completely losing them to whatever unseen or unforeseen circumstances we have around us. So so are you able to?
Yes, it's visible. Yeah.
Ma'am is not in the.
She exited. I'll just call her.
Yeah, so I think there must be some issue. Sorry for the inconvenience caused.
Okay. Is the
Is
presentation?
that presentation? Ma'am, you just have to it will be there in
Uploaded?
the upload, this one. You just have to click on it once.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm new to this, so it's
No worries.
it's not
Yes.
uh, uh, yeah, it's not working well in the beginning, but I hope it will have no troubles later on.
Yeah, no, it will definitely work well.
Okay.
Uh,
So you can
yeah.
see my presentation. Is
Yeah.
it
Yes, yes,
okay?
yes.
All right. Okay. So as I was speaking, I work for an organization called Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage. And Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage just does not only have the conservation unit; it is all about heritage conservation. So the trust would have different departments, or it has different departments, like the Natural Heritage Division, the Architectural Heritage Division, the Intangible Cultural Heritage Division, and the Knowledge Center. There is a Intact Heritage Academy. So there are many divisions, and all of them cater to especially look at conserving cultural heritage in their specific field. Like the name suggests, natural heritage would be all about conserving natural heritage, architectural buildings, and all are looked by Architectural Heritage Division. Then there is intangible cultural heritage like music, live-in structures, or dance forms and different art forms, or folklores, and all of those aspects are looked after by the intangible cultural heritage. Then we have the craft and community cell also, who look after craftsmen, the trades, the practices. They are indigenous craftsmen and support them also. And there then the department which I specifically work for is the Art and Material Heritage Division. So as the name suggests, we look after or conserve art and material heritage. So when we talk about art, it is not limited to paintings. It also have textiles, paper objects, even painting is already there, sculpture. So this is how the visual on the screen is about how our lab looks like. So you can see that conservators are working on different objects. So that is how it is for us on a daily basis. Like we get a lot of collection from private collectors also, as well as from various government institutions, museums, organization which hold a large collection of artwork. Like we also currently did a project for the WHO where the building was to be refurbished, and they wanted the painting to be shifted to another part. So it was a MF Hussein's wall painting mural, which was cut out from the wall itself. We placed it in the we had to place it in the storage for a long time, because in between the process of conservation and relocation of the painting, that there was COVID. So then we had to keep it in store for a long while, and now it is back in the new building where they wanted us to or relocate it, and it has been placed on the wall. So things like that, there are interesting activities, interesting projects we work with. But today's topic is not about conservation, it's a step before conservation. That is how to safeguard or prevent before we or before we have the need to get into hands-on conservation or curative conservation aspect. So intact the conservation laboratory, which I just shared the image, that is of New Delhi. So similarly, we have a lot of other unit also, or the conservation labs also, which works especially for conserving art and material heritage. So there is a center in Delhi, Lucknow, Kolkata, Bhubaneswar, Bangalore, and Mumbai also used to have one. So there are many projects which which we undertake still now. And our objective is to provide unmatched services in art conservation, as well as to do continuous research and study, so that we can ensure that best methodologies are there in practice while we conserve art objects, then listing as well as document heritage, providing training and capacity building, and creating awareness for heritage conservation. Like today's talk is also one of that awareness aspect which our organization undertakes, so that more and more people can be aware about how can they safeguard their cultural heritage. It may not be in a large scale, you need to be protecting only a big or you're looking at a monument or something like that. It's not just that. Everyone has something or the other which is valuable to them, and it could be a document, it could be something very emotional, early attached, like a grandmom's sari which has been inherited by you, or something very similar to that. Every it need not be a very large scale, or a object which has a lot of value. It could be a simple thing. The basic idea for having this conversation is just to know what can be the problem and how can we mitigate it, so that it's saved. So moving forward, this is just an example of what objects we work with, like stone objects, textiles. There's also easel painting, wall paintings, wood, paper objects. These is just an example of how we work and conserve. So these all aspect of curative conservation comes later on, but what we are now focusing on are the preventive aspects of preventive conservation. So the topic which we have today is of disaster and conflict affecting cultural heritage. So, the main reason or the main problem which we observe these days are, first, there are many climatic change or many environmental change, which is very evident these days. For example, there has been, when summers are around, we hear that a lot of fire or accidents related to fire has occurred. It's not only in industrial areas or in home or isolated areas, but it's also like in office buildings and museums. And one of the prime example of destruction of cultural heritage by fire was in the Natural History Museum in Delhi. So apart from fire, earthquake, that is also one of the major episodes or major problem which we hear, that earthquake has happened in one place, and sometimes the magnitude is too much that the entire city has been destroyed. Then there is also slow rising floods, as well as pest, environmental changes. These are all of the natural disasters we hear about, which is affecting our cultural heritage. Then there are man-made disasters also, like for example, electrical fittings, fire suppression, and handling of objects are not proper, due to which damage occurs. Vandalism is there. War and conflict is occurring, due to which, when the ideologies are not matching, then the other communities antiquity may not be felt as it's worthy of keeping, and then they destroy it. So things like that are happening around us. Then there is also like a subtle thing which happens in a long term. For example, pollution is there, and we feel that pollution is only affecting the human body, but in over a long period of time, pollution can also kind of accelerate the deterioration in cultural objects. For example, when we have paintings with pigments, mostly miniature paintings, you will see that over a time period, the white painted area has now turned into a grayish painted up or paint layer. So that's because the appearance changes, because it is interacting with pollutants in the atmosphere, and that is kind of making this visual change in the object. So it doesn't happen very quickly, like you're keeping it in the you're framing it and you're keeping it on the wall. It doesn't, you won't feel that there is a change. It would happen over a period of time. Many years might pass by, and then you realize that initially the color was a bit different, and now the color looks a lot of different from what it used to be. So this is also cause of extreme or prolonged pollution. Then electrical wires and lightning, which we are all aware that we hear a lot of news that this building was gutted because the electrical fittings, some AC unit has overworked, and that has caught fire, and now it has destroyed a lot of things in the building. Many people have casualties were there, things like that we hear about. So all of this is there, and we all are aware of it, that these are the causes, these are the problems, we are all aware of these things. But the thing is, like, how to mitigate them, or how to like solve these issues. Just before we go, just to see the impact, like how this all together has caused damages across the world. For example, I was just talking about the National Museum or Natural History Museum in Delhi. It was the fire incident happened there, where we have lost a lot of taxidermy and animal fossils. It happened in 2016, and there was a lot of damage, and nothing could have been retrieved, because all of these were organic materials which were very susceptible to fire damage. And then once the fire started catching up, nothing could have been saved. So similarly, earthquake has demolished. We all know about the earthquakes in Nepal, which has destroyed the city. Many people have lost their life, but they have also lost a lot of culturally significant heritage in the country. Similarly, we have heard about the fire in the Notre Dame de Paris in 2019. So one example of fire again destroying, acting as a destructor for cultural heritage. Then there is then by fire, one more National Museum of Brazil was destroyed in 2018. So these are some of the episodes or some of the events which we know of that has largely affected cultural heritage. So now, having discussed this, having a knowledge about all of this incident, what are the problems or what are the aggressors which are causing damages to the cultural heritage, now we have to examine that how we can safeguard them from deteriorating or damaging everything from completely without there would be no trace of it, if we are able to prevent or cure or have some kind of plan in place to protect our cultural heritage. So firstly, when we talk about any form of damage, like even for example at your house also, if there is a particular or if there are collections, or if there are paintings, if there are some textile object, or if there is any valuable statue or any wooden idol or any form of thing which you feel that it is very important for me, even for that matter, it does not have to be an art object. You know that there is some valuable document, my school certificate, my some documents which is very precious to me. So then how will you ensure that they are in a safer condition? For example, when we have any valuable documents, the first thing is we will keep it in a plastic bag or something, so that no water would affect it, or we will keep it in a place in a safe or a storage or something like that, so that it is not easily accessible. No thief should be stealing it, some or any such kind of worries we have, we will address it accordingly. Similarly, for cultural objects also, That's the main part, that to understand what is the risk associated with the particular site or with the particular art object or the cultural object. So risk assessment is the first stage, where we have to ensure, or where we have to see what all kind of damage or what all kind of factors can affect my object, that it would lead to a damage or deterioration. For example, I know impact of an damage can be different to different material. For example, I have a paper object. So paper can be damaged by fire. It can be damaged by moisture. There would be pests which can affect it badly. So earthquake can also damage the object, but the position of the object. If it's a book and it's if kept in the top shelf and it falls, then the book can tear apart. So we have to see what are the factors which can affect my object. So risk assessment is important. So for risk assessment, there's also one aspect which we look at. We have to be prepared. We know our object, this is the risk which is going to be happening to my object, so then we have to be prepared with the measures for that. For example, I was just saying, like the paper object is kept at a flat area, so maybe when there's an earthquake, but it may not be affected that much because it's not going to fall down. Similarly, if some it is kept to some water source, near to some water source, or a area where there are flames, like electrical wirings are there, and something, the bookshelf or something is kept to next to it. So when in case if there is a electrical fire or any kind of problem related to electrical fittings and it catches fire, then the paper object can destroy. So similarly, you have to understand like what kind of material I have and what can affect them, and then you have to be prepared to protect or prepared to mitigate the problem, so that you have to plan accordingly where to keep the object and how to safeguard it and how to keep it away from potential risk or damage. Then the thing is, next is response strategies, so that you know where, if you have an object and it's going to be like in a if there is a disaster or there is a earthquake or something like that which is happening. For example, in such states, we almost think of only saving our life at first, and then the risk factors and all the other objects or all the other things come to our mind. But if there is an earthquake or something, there is also something which we can ensure is before, like for example, if there are objects on the top of the like of shelves and things like that, and the area where you're staying is more prone to earthquake, floods, or any such kind of thing, then we have to ensure that all of those things, like there is a shelf and there is things kept on the top, and it doesn't have any kind of restraint or things like that, then you should make sure that they are not in that place where it could easily fall down. So if there is in such cases, if you ensure that there is a kind of a preventive layer to it, that can ensure that the object is not damaged. Similarly, you have to also seal once there's a damage or things like that happen, an unfortunate event happens, then the idea is to protect, or whatever has happened to the object, you shouldn't be destroying it more. For example, there are episodes, an example is like once we had a client, so he had a lot of art objects in his collection. So he was keeping all the objects in his basement. So and this is in Delhi, which had happened. So in 2000, I think it was in 23 or 24, where there were a lot of episodes of rainfall happening, and rainfall waterlogging had happened because the sewage systems are not that clean. There was like water retention was there, the water was not able to move out, and because the sewages were not clean, the drainage system was not clean enough, so the water kept on rising and rising, and therefore there was again rainfall. So in Delhi, it keeps on happening these days that there is, due to rainfall, the water level keep on rising. And since it was a basement, and the basement had many windows, the windows were not properly sealed, so the water kept on seeping. And this person didn't realize that there was such a problem of waterlogging, or it was raining, so he must have thought that the drainage system is working fine, nothing is going out of place. So after a long while, the servant or someone around had seen that there is some water dampness or something like that. They realized, and they could see some traces of fungus and all that. So they just opened up that space, and then when this went downstairs to the basement, they saw that there was like a lot of art object have already, there's like water has logged there. And there's a lot of art object which had been affected, like many of the canvases had fungus on them, the paint layer had been washed off, the paper object had completely been destroyed, because then when excessive moisture is introduced to paper for a longer time, the fiber starts deteriorating. So it had kind of completely gone soggy. Whatever print on paper it had completely gone off. Watercolors had completely destroyed because it had already been washed away. So things like that had happened. So what had happened is, once the servants realized that the water has damaged the object, they quickly took all the objects, and then they made a stack and they just put it outside. So what had happened is, there was a disaster, that is waterlogging had happened. The object has been damaged. There was no preparedness at that time. Were not aware of it, so there was no regular check. So this had happened. They took all the object and put it outside to for them to dry. So that is the immediate response. They thought that that is the best strategy to do, is to take it outside and put it there. So what had happened is, they just immediately took everything out, and together the oil paintings, the print on paper, the watercolor, everything they took out in one go, and then they just placed it outside. They didn't know where to place it. They just put it on the floor itself. So this what had happened is the moisture started evaporating from the object, but eventually the dust and dirt started accumulating, and then there was a sudden change in the like the moisture content. So even when you have to, the moisture has to be released from the object, it has to be gradually released. It's not like all of a sudden you dry it with dryers and all that, then that kind of deteriorates or makes the paper itself brittle. So some of these things, like drying it with dryer or something like that, was done on the object. So that kind of become very brittle, very hard, and dust and dirt has accumulated on that, like it just stuck to it. Fungus had occurred in between the pages. Some of the oils and oil paintings, paper paintings on paper were put together, so all of them started sticking together, and they just thought that they are drying, and when it's dry we will remove it out. But it was not the case, because it was stuck, it shrunk, some tone, and things like that started happening. So it's also important to understand that whoever is around the object, or whoever is around the heritage site or any place, they should be aware that how we should be responding to the object. It shouldn't be like, okay, there is water there, so I should be just removing it and stacking all the things which are different in make or material should not be stacked together. So the response strategy is also one of the important aspects. Then community participation. So whenever there is a disaster damage, and mostly all the communities come together and tries to extract or tries to make safe of the materials which are in disaster, or people, material, whatever they feel that they can save, they would be saving. So community participation is also a very important aspect to mitigate disaster, as well as documentation. So this is what mostly we feel there is a lacuna in when we talk about cultural heritage. So as in India, we have a lot of cultural heritage, and there are museums with a lot of cultural heritage. There are individuals who have a lot of art objects in their collection, or any kind of heritage objects in their collection. And there are many, like, it's been since we have been having a lot of history. We have a lot of different materials, mediums, communities. Many things are there in our cultural heritage itself, cultural history itself. So what happens is, when there are when there are things in numbers, we find it very difficult to maintain or record them properly. So that is one of the reason where we kind of feel, or where we kind of don't know what is there with us and what we don't have. So proper documentation or things like that are not available. And in terms of wars and conflict also, we may not be able to relocate or replace or find the location of certain objects if we don't have a proper documentation involved. So when we talk about documentation, it's not only the written or photographic documents which we have. It should be also somewhat now a digital documentation also, because digital documentation has a bit of ease for access. Like paper documentations or photographic documentation at times are affected with the object itself. So digital documentation is also something which we can plan, that can help us in being prepared for the disaster, as well as to recover, as well as respond to the object. So we know where the object is, it would be easier for us to respond. So these are some of the points which we have to ensure, so that we discuss, or we know how to safeguard the heritage. So the main part is like, how can we be prepared, like how, if we know what is the problem and how to mitigate, and then only we would be able to safeguard. So for example, if there is a wooden object, what would be more damaging? If I ask, it could be more harmful for the object. Would it be fire, flood, earthquake, pest attack? All of that is damaging or harmful for the wooden object. So immediate losses, like this is just an example of some of the objects, some of the material which we deal with or which we conserve, and what are the main impact or what are the main problems which we observe with them. Like in case of fire, the wood would completely char and there would be nothing left of it. In case of flood, there would be structural damage to it. It will absorb moisture because it's porous in nature, and then once it absorbs moisture, the lignin, the cellulose, the hemicellulose, everything would start dissolving eventually, and then there would be pest damage, insect damage, and so on. For textile objects, again, complete loss would be there in case of fire. And in case of floods, there would be like the dyes would wash off, or the color would wash off. There would be permanent staining, again, fungal infection or any kind of infestation can happen. For metal objects, fire may be causing some kind of structural damage, but it may not completely char away the object unless and until it is very highly, the temperature is too high that it can melt away. Compared to wood and textile, this fire may not completely be completely be, unless the temperature is too high, it may cause some structural damages. Then in case of flood, if there is iron or other kind of iron, copper, all of this can have rusting, accelerate rusting, or there could be blackening, there could be change in the properties, corrosion can happen. In case of stone, this also can, unlike wood, textile, and metal, stone would be much more stabler, but it will also have structural changes, and flood will also kind of accelerate weathering and things like that. So these are the things which are going to happen. So we should be aware what is going to happen to one particular object or one particular material, so that we know what to save first. For example, if there is in case of fire, then we know that first we have to go for wooden objects or paper objects and save them first, and maybe a stone object can be saved on a later time, because the temperature would not be like it would not completely char away that object. So we have to see which object we can save first. When we talk about fire, so fire is a chemical reaction between oxygen in the atmosphere and fuel. When heated to its ignition temperature, fire occurs. So that is how the principle is. But what are the sources of ignition? So basically electrical power equipment, flame open flame sources, gas fueled equipment, other fueled equipment. Then there are exposure to heating. So there are all of these items if around a cultural object or of any kind of object that can accelerate fire, or that can cause fire also. So then we have to be aware these are the things which are going to be causing fire, and these should be away from the object, which I feel is valuable to me and any form of heritage. And how will we ensure that it is not going to damage or it is not going to cause any kind of harm to our object? So basically maintenance and testing, that is one of the main problem which we observe, that there is lack of maintenance and there is lack of testing. And every year when summers are there, you will hear that there is some ALC has malfunction, and that had led to damage, that had caught fire, the entire building was gutted, or the entire material inside a house was charred, because maintenance is not there, and it's not been tested. The wiring is old, and if there is any kind of like if there is no proper checking every year, then it would kind of have some problems which we are not aware of, and when we are not thinking about it, that's when it strikes. So regular check has to be made, fire alarms can be installed, then emergency lighting should be working, as well as if there is any fault in the system, then there are many places where there if there is an overload, then it starts automatically shutting down. So this can be, we can also ensure something like that. And whenever there is a fire, mainly what happens is we don't know where to go, so the escape routes are mostly what we do is, we don't have space, then we just move around some of the object, and maybe it's around the fire exit, and the fire exit gets jammed, or like it's crowded with things, so people cannot escape easily. So any fire exit, wherever there are, the escape route should be easier. There should not be anything cluttered around it, so that people, when there is any kind of fire or any episode like that, people starts moving and they are going towards the fire exit. So if the fire exit is not going to be opening smoothly, then they will be trapped. So that is one thing which has to be ensured. Then all fire exits should be easily openable, or it could be opened easily without any kind of hindrance. There should be signs where people would know where to exit. So these are one of some of the safety measures which we can ensure, that while in case if a fire breaks, then what has to be done, so that things can be done quickly, we can save ourselves as well as the other objects quickly. So apart from that, some of the preventive things which we should be looking at are that there should not be any spare cylinders which are kept around us. It should not be stored in the basement, or it should not be under stairs or cupboards containing electrical meters or equipment, because it would whenever there's an episode, then it would be like completely like everything would be catching fire, so this would accelerate the problem. Then there should be a detail of all installations need to be kept in convenient places for passing to the emergency services on the arrival at an incident. So everyone should be aware, if a building is in use, everyone should be aware that where the fire exits are, and how to escape during fire. That has to be ensured, everyone know where the passages are. Then there should be inspection of sockets, which I said, testing and maintenance. That is one key aspect, as well as there should be areas like workshops, laboratories, which are high risk of fire, having fire, like kitchens, boilers. All of this should not be kept very close to the collection or the building where the cultural heritage has been stored, or sites. So they should not be having kitchens, and if the kitchen is there, it should not be near to the collection itself, where materials like paper, wood, or things like that which can catch fire easily are stored. So these are some of the aspects to mitigate fire. Now the other main problem, and India, it's been now, we have been hearing of many episodes, and in Nepal, it's been in Nepal we have seen that how earthquake can destroy the city completely. Similarly, India also, in Delhi also, we have heard of earthquakes, and luckily we have been saved that it's not been to that Richter scale that it had caused a major destruction. But you see one of this image from Taiwan. So this is a museum of Taiwan which was completely squashed under earthquake. So what are the mitigation plan while earthquake occurs is, see, we are aware that we should be aware that what seismic zone our area is under, or the where the collection or the storage or the built heritage or the living heritage is. So when we are aware that the seismic zone is, then we can take preventions accordingly. For example, if there is a building which is in a seismic zone where like the earthquakes is very prone, so probably it's better to shift, if it's a museum building or if it's a building with a lot of art collections, it's better to shift that and to find a place where it can be kept in a very good manner. But things like that may not be possible, because the logistics would be huge in that case. If you are in a particular city and the history of the city has to be displayed through the collection itself, and we cannot change the area where the display or the museum is, then we ensure that we make the collection, like proof the collection from any kind of damage due to earthquake. So how can we ensure that? So some of the steps or some of the things which we can be mindful of, that are, while maintenance should be properly done for the building. So while we were talking about fire, we were talking about the wiring, insulation, everything has to be maintained properly. In case of earthquake, one aspect is we are is surrounded inside a building, or the collection is inside a building. So there are small things which we ignore. For example, there is dampness in the roof, or the ceiling has any kind of it's not or the brick, or there's plaster damage, or something is there structurally, it's not sound, there is some kind of problem in the building. So we keep on saying, okay, when the fund is there, we will look at it whether we can repair it, or we can ensure that it is maintained. So we keep on saying that, okay, we will do it later and things like that. So that sometimes becomes the problem. Nobody addresses it like quickly enough, that because earthquakes and everything is unexpected. So once we keep on ignoring and the maintenance has not been done, that can kind of cause problem when such events occur. So the ceilings and floor can collapse. So wherever there is a damage, that would be the first area which would affect, and that would fall off, and that can that can be harmful for the people inside as well as for the objects. Everything can be damaged because the maintenance is not properly done. So apart from that, when we display objects in a museum or in any in our house also, we have to make sure that lowering the objects assembly center of gravity by adding weight to the lower part. For example, there is a sculpture which is standing, uh, like a tall sculpture is there. So we have to make sure that there is some kind of hooks or any kind of clamps which are supporting throughout the body of the sculpture. So basically, we are trying to adjust the gravity against gravity. So when there is a shake which is happening, it should be able to hold it, and not like it's just moving back and forth and it's going to break. So we had to make sure there are clamps or there are locks which are there. If there is a tall sculpture, then the locks are there in between on the body of the object, so that when there is a vibration which is happening, it should not make the object, or the object would not be resisting to the vibration. If it's free, it is going to resist, and when it starts resisting, it kind of breaks off, or it kind of falls or topples, and then it will break off. So that we have to make sure there are proper clampings. And it's also that the lower part has to have a bit of, if it's not a tall object, but if it's just a object which like it's proportionate, but then we have to make sure that lower part has kind of some kind of weight to it, so that it doesn't shift back and forth and just fall off from wherever it is placed. So mostly keeping sculptures and things like that on a like a height is not recommended. So we have to make the arrangement according to the object itself. For example, um ideally something very slightly heavy like a textile object, it can be still placed on a top shelf. Maybe underneath you can still place books or things like that. Very heavy objects like stone, metals and things like that should be kept on the lowest lower area, so that it doesn't fall on the person, as well as when it falls, it will, from a height, it will break. So things like that has to be kept. And the other thing is to restrain, which we have already talked about. There are also display units or furniture which can be that can also have an isolation mechanism. For example, what happens is when earthquake happens, so the vibration is there, and due to which what happens, the furniture is very rigid and it would not move back and forth to the vibration. So when once there is no isolation mechanism, the vibration goes through the entire cabinet, and that kind of makes the objects topple. So there are isolation mechanisms which we can ensure. The For example, there's one in your screen which you can see that how the isolation mechanism would work. There are just shock absorbers which are underneath and kind of ease out the vibration and prevents it from completely breaking off or completely destroying or damaging itself. So other thing is mounting properly, restraining objects to the wall so that it doesn't move back and forth. These can also be ensured so that it doesn't have cause much damage. So some these are some of the example, like when I was talking about restraining or having a mounting. So you can see the pottery objects, so they have these metal clamps around them, so they kind of make sure if there is a earthquake there, it kind of ensures that it doesn't move out of its place, and it topples the other object. It kind of ensures that it is locking itself in one position, and it is also with shock absorber, that so that it can vibrate accordingly or move accordingly. So you can also ensure there is padding around the objects in your storage, where the pu forms are available. You can pad them according to the size and proportion of the objects, and it should be tightly packed, so that when there is a vibration occurring, it should not be moving and hitting other object and damaging other object and damaging itself. So a pad can be given, and a padding, and inside a secure box can be ensured, so that it doesn't damage itself or the other objects around. So other problem which we are talking about, and this was one of the example I gave about one of our client who had this basement with a lot of paper objects and art objects in place. So the main reason there was for damage was that there was they didn't properly check, there was flooding around, and that there they couldn't do much at that time. And when they realized that the object was damaged, they took it out, and then they just spread it out or just put it on the floor itself, and then it was lying there for a long time, and then it had caused a lot of damages in the object itself. So what are the reason for slow rising flood, and how can we mitigate it? So mainly sewer failures or drainage failures, they are some of the problems. Like for the one of our client which I discussed about, he had this problem, the drainage was blocked, and because of that the water had risen, and that had caused the problem. There are also other kinds of things which we observe, like sprinkler systems inside the, when it's just for safety that we ensure that sprinklers are there, so that when fire breaks out the sprinkler can work. But at times sprinklers do malfunction, and that can cause damage. Then there would be issues with piping, or inside the wall itself there would be a broken water line or pipes, and that would cause dampness in the wall. First it may be ignored, nobody would realize it all of a sudden. Eventually it causes damage, and then when there is a dampness, that's the time when we might be observing it, and then we realize that, oh no, there's a dampness and it is affecting object. And mostly it happens, we have a lot of clients who bring in object where there would be fungal spores and stains on the object, and they didn't don't realize that what is the problem. They feel initially there was no problem or no change in the object. Over a time period they see there is some kind of discoloration or molding or some funny smell which is coming. So then that is the time when they take it out of the wall, and then they see that there is fungus, and then they realize that the problem could be a dampness in the wall. And it could not be, it could not only be just a broken water line, it could also be because there is a substantial amount of rain which is not supposed to be that much in Delhi. But these days we are also getting a lot of rain in Delhi, and we have seen a lot of cases wherein clients bring such objects with mold or fungus on them. That's because rainfall is happening, and then the masonry or the brick wall is just absorbing moisture, or due to capillary effect the moisture transfer, and there's a lot of retention in the wall. Moisture has been retained by the wall for a long time, and they don't have any area to evaporate. The moisture won't be evaporating properly, and that is just staying there, and due to which the moisture get transferred to the object, and then there is fungus. So things like that also happens, like leaking roof. Then the ventilation system is not properly functioning, so the moisture is not able to release itself, and then there is this stagnant moisture, air, everything, which combinedly accelerates the work of or the activity of fungus also. So there is other examples are use of water during construction, renovation, and poor or improperly insulated insulations. So we have to ensure there is waterproofing, and building is not completely affected, like there are no areas which is damp and it's just transferring. So these things has to be ensured. So again, maintenance plays an important role in mitigating this slow rising flooding also. So what are the products, and what are the objects which get damaged by water? So as I said, risk assessment. So this comes under risk assessment. So we have to ensure what kind of damage would happen in one particular object, and how we can save them. For example, bone products, they prolong water exposure can cause cracking, distortion, physical weakness, and all that. For book, it's again softening, distortion, dyes and inks would just run like bleed, softening would be there. Then the leather bindings would be hardening, there would be fungus happening on them. Ceramics may have salt or patination. Leather would have like fungal growth would be there, staining would be there, leaching out of gelatin material would be there. Metal would have corrosion on them. The water would affect or accelerate corrosion on them. Paintings will have like structural problems also, as well as there would be losses of paint layer, flaking. All of these can be the caused by slow rising floods. So this has to be kept in mind, that what kind of damage can be occurring. So as I said, in case of fire, maybe a stone object would be not affecting immediately, but something like wood and paper, textile would affect immediately. They would be charred away. There would be no like nothing would be left of it. In case of floods of water also, the paper, all these organic materials, they are more susceptible to all kind of environmental change, or kind of like fire, water. All of this can be more problematic for organic materials like paper, leather, textile, bone, all of that. So we have to take action accordingly. We know these are going to be in immediate danger, so we have to plan our storage or plan our display accordingly. Then these are just an example of what can be caused by water, like what all problems can happen to them. So we have to be mindful of these problems and the materials, so we can mitigate the problem. So what can be the solutions? Like for example, if there are objects should not be kept against the wall, because especially what happens is when we display paintings, we cannot say that you should not keep paintings or on the wall. It's not possible. We display paintings because paintings has to be seen vertically, where you're looking at them, and then that's how we enjoy the beauty of the painting. So what can be done? Just because we think that there would be dampness, or there could be any faulty pipe or anything on the wall which can have seepage or dampness, we can't avoid to keep painting on the wall. So what can be ensured is that there would be buffers which can be kept in between the wall and the painting. For example, you must have seen there are these small plastic buffers which we place it under the furniture, so though when we lift or drag a furniture, there's no scratch on the floor. So there are these plastic small circular button or buffers which comes in. So such kind of things can be added on the back of the frame, so that it's just away from the wall and it's not directly touching the wall. So when we talk about paintings, so either if it's an oil painting or if it's a paper object, it has been framed. In any frame also, frame kind of ensures that there is no dust or dirt or any other kind of things, unwanted things just coming and attacking the object. But once we frame it and just we place it on the wall, the job is not over. It's not safe enough. What happens is, if it's basically a wooden frame is always advisable, because wood can absorb as well as it can release moisture. So if it's a metal or any some plastic frame or synthetic frame, as these days people use a lot of synthetic frame. So what happens is, your frame is synthetic, it's non-breathable, and there is a glass on it, and underneath there is the painted or paper layer is there. For example, if it's just a paper painting, or if any cloth painting or anything is there, so this paper or textile, it's breathable in nature. It's trying, and there's usually a framer would give a backboard and it's on the wall. So now just imagine this. In that scenario, there's a wall, it has a bit of dampness, there's a frame which ensures that there is no exchange or release of moisture, in sense it's a metal frame or a synthetic frame, and your object is inside or in between all of these layers. So the wall would normally release some kind of dampness, or seepage is happening, it will release it to the paper object, to the frame. So the frame is not okay taking any moisture. Now what happens is, the moisture is has to release to somewhere, so it will go to the back of your painted painting, or the mount board, or the backboard, whatever board is there, it will go through it, and it will try to migrate to the paper itself, paper object itself. From there, the paper object, it will also try to release moisture, it will try to go to the glass area where the glazing is there, the glass, and the glass cannot absorb any moisture. So now what happens, it is trapped in between the the wall, the backboard, the painting and the glass. The moisture is there, so the moisture sits there for a long while, it doesn't have any space to evaporate. Even the metal frame is also not allowing it to evaporate. So what happens, there is a stagnant air or stagnant environment inside, in within the paper object, and now it cannot release. So it kind of starts softening whatever paint layer is there on the paper. The fungus has this fungal spores are there in the weather itself, in the environment itself. So fungus are attracted here. For them it's a very good environment. They will be sitting on the paint layer, they will be eating whatever like binding medium is there. Mostly binding medium is affected, and once they start sitting there, they'll start releasing their own toxins, like for example, whatever stains would be produced by them, or there would be they would propagate, or they would extend. There would be many areas which would be affected. One area would be having fungus and it will spread across. So when once it's there, when you remove it, then only you realize that that is substantial amount of moisture is there and there is fungus. So there are things which you can avoid with. That is like you can mitigate, like adding just a simple buffer or any kind of separator between the wall, the frame, and to ensure that the frame is a wooden frame, because if there is moisture, something should be able to release. The moisture has to be releasing from somewhere. The glass you have added for protection from dust and dirt, but the glass is not able to release moisture. At least a frame, if it's breathable, it would release moisture. So now if there is water seepage, again the wall is there, there is a wooden frame, and in between there has to be a small separator. In it can be a plastic separator, it can be a wooden separator, so that it's not directly touching the wall, and there is no air which is passing through. If the air passes through, the moisture would be evaporating, and then there would not be a stagnation. So something like that can be ensured. So this is one form of mitigation. Then avoid placing objects against uninsulated exterior walls. So water seepage and everything has to be taken care of. And then you can display your object in storages, especially if you're going to store textile objects. Then the colored textile and the white textile has to be separated. It should not be kept together. So this is in case of flooding or things like that, you get to know about it on a later stage, or there is an immediate rainfall is happening and the water logging has started, and if you want to rescue it, you have to ensure why before rescuing it itself, you have to ensure that the colored materials are not placed with the non-colored items, because by the time you reach, the damage must have already happened. So we have to ensure that they are not kept together, so that the staining or the transfer of color occurs. The other thing which you can ensure is to avoiding display, storing, examining object near water sources. So it's not ideally good to keep objects in basement, because basement are the first one into impact during floods or any kind of waterlogging. And mainly, as I said, the shelves or the windows are there for sunlight to enter, but then probably those windows might having any creases or cracks, or any crevices through which the water can penetrate or seep in. So we have to make and ensure that properly it is sealed, it's insulated, and then we can ensure, if you don't have an option but to keep objects in storage, then probably books or materials like that may not be the things you should be keeping in a basement storage, because the humidity level rises or is more in the basement, and then that can deteriorate the object. So you can also use dehumidifiers, silica gels, things like that in basement area. If at all you have to store objects in the basement, then you can ensure dehumidifiers are there to absorb the excess moisture. Then the other things which we can ensure is there is no carpeting or things like that on the floor, because if there are carpets, then they will retain moisture, and then that can be when they start releasing, the humidity inside the room will increase. So these are some of the aspects which we can check to safeguard our objects from deterioration. The other main problem is whenever water rise or a flood occurs, the immediate effect would be pest attack, or it need not be that there is a flood, or that's why pest has caused it. It's an in You can see everywhere there is cockroaches, ants, and things like that happening. So it's not we are not going to eradicate or eliminate them, but the thing is we have to save our object from deterioration. We don't want them to eat those valuable items which we have. So we don't want them to kill or die, want to kill them, or to add toxins in the environment so that they die. That is not what the essential idea is, but to ensure that they don't propagate, or they are not encouraged to grow in a particular area. That we have to make ensure. So what can be done? So any kind of pest would have some kind of agenda to live on. First of all, it needs a source of food. That's one primary thing. We also do the same thing. Source of food should be there. We also need shelter. They also need shelter. Then their environment should be good enough so that they can survive. Extreme heat is not suitable for them, as we also don't like extreme heat. They are also not suitable. High heat, when I say high heat, it's not like extreme heat. It's like warm temperature is good, but extreme heat is not suitable for them. And then there is also other things like material which they can feed easily, that should be available. So these are some of the things which they look for. And what are the food sources for them? For example, paper, textile. These are the ones which, on leather, these are one of the things, or the materials which they impact quickly, because they are food for them. And since it's food for them, they are going to attack this object. And then now you know that these are like paper, textile, or any kind of leather. These are the material, wood or things like these, which are organic in nature, which are easily like enjoyable by the insect. That are the items in your collection. If you have the collection, then you know that these are going to be getting affected immediately after flood, or if the humidity level increases, then you know these are going to be affected. Then what can you do to remove them from the collection, or how can you save them? For example, I'm talking about the object which was on the wall. For example, that paper object which you have mounted and kept it on the wall, it has fungus on it. Now you have realized there is fungus on it. Now you're removing the object, and then you're placing it not on the wall, and you have planned to remove it, and you're keeping it somewhere else. So you have to make ensure that the somewhere else should not be next to the other collections, your collections. So once an object, for the immediate causes, if an object is infected, it can cause infection to another object also. So ensure that pest is, if an object is infected by fungus or any kind of termite or anything, it should not be like kept next to other objects which it can also infect. So that is one thing which you have to keep in mind. And the other thing is, you have to ensure that whatever favorable climate or environment it has, we have to eradicate that. For example, you cannot eradicate the food source, so that's being the object itself. So what you can do is, you can cut down the stagnant air around it, and then you can cut down the humidity levels, so it is uncomfortable, it has to come out. And then you can also ensure that there is no particular or like any like a warm or cozy environment for it. So temperature, humidity, and can ensure that it is not now comfortable. Then if you have to eradicate it, then you can add other materials also. There would be fumigants which you can take help of. There would be sticky substance, or the sticky traps which are available. You can keep it next to the next, not near to the object, but wherever the entry or exit points to the object is, you can keep it there. So many cockroaches, ants, rats, rodents, for them you can keep them. There are fumigation materials also which are available. Then one thing which is again coming back to maintenance, a good housekeeping has to be encouraged. There should be no trash, debris near to the collection or the place where you are exhibiting your object, or where you are storing your object. And then also to ensure that there is proper regular monitoring, as well as you also have to ensure that the food sources what we eat is also food for them. So the food sources or the kitchen or the pantry should not be next to the object where you are storing the object, or where the objects are on display, or the where the built heritage is there or the living heritage is there, so that there is no immediate threat. Because from the food sources which we are having, or the pantry or kitchen, cockroaches and things like that can migrate, and then it can enter your collections also. So these are some of the concept which we can ensure or look at, that they can save our heritage or save our collection from damages. And when we talk about protecting cultural property or heritage in times of war and conflict, so there is not much we can do, because it would be an immediate attack or immediate surprise for us. No one is prepared for something like that. We don't know when something can be impacted or something could be affected. So what we can ensure is that we make proper inventories, like we document all the objects which is in the collection. We know our collection very well, we have photographs. So in what happens is, in cases of wars and situation like conflicts and all that, people start going into they are not we cannot control them, or there is no moral code or civil code which is applicable at that point. People would go and steal objects, and things are missing, important collections are missing. So there is no check which can be done. The only thing we can maintain is a inventory, where we know that these are our items, which are these are the materials which we have in our collection. And that would help us in identifying or locating. Once the situation settles down, we know this is the object, and these are missing or these are present. So an inventory has to be there, with photographic documentation as well as all kind of written record with it. And the other thing is, if there is a very valuable object available, or if there is a very valuable object with you, so probably relocating, if you know that there is a situation or a scenario where this object can be. And mostly most of the museums, I think, would be doing the same thing also. There would be not for the safety purpose as well as for the health of the collection also, there would be only some seasons where one particular valuable object would be on display, and then it would be rotation would happen, or then there would be also replicas or things like that would be in place, and the actual object may not be in display. So relocation or safe storage, all of these can also be ensured. Then reinforcement, registering, all of this, like reinforcing in sense like the only thing is, you can protect your environment, or your surrounding, or the building where the object is, so that it's not accessible for the for anyone who enters without like a prompt, or without any notice. Then making sure that the building is in such a way reinforced that it would not collapse while an attack is happening. The objects are or things are in such a location where it cannot be accessed, things like that. And also registering it with international committees, so that anything which is very valuable is known to the world. So this is only for those very culturally important objects which has to be like it's a national pride, and it has to be protected from war, conflict, and all that. And mostly what we can do is having for example, there are sculptures which are very valuable. So now 3D documentation, photogrammetry, things like that are also in place, because we cannot never say that I can completely protect or safeguard my object from damage during war and conflict, because it's not humanly possible. At times we are only worried about our life, we may not be thinking about any object, any collection at that time. So for the history, or the for the world to have such an information, the only thing is, we can make ensure that there is proper inventory, digitization, registration, and record of the object in a digital world, at least, so that it can be accessible to the human being once the conflict or the war has sorted out. So these are some of the things. These are not completely I won't say these are the complete foolproof plan, but these are some steps which can ensure that there is some kind of safety net around the objects which we work with. So with that, I would conclude my presentation, and I think I have taken a long time in completing it. I hope it was informative.
Yes, ma'am. Indeed, it was a very interesting lecture, and thank you so much for enlightening us today with such a beautiful presentation. Thank you so much, ma'am. Uh, so we have many questions. So, with your permission, can I take them?
Yes.
Okay. So first, I'll take the question of Nandan Shastri ji because he's the honorary president. So it's our privilege to take his question first. How can we secure cultural treasures as pillars of peace? Um, Rico, sir, is it? Am I pronouncing it correctly? Have you?
Yes, Rico
Yeah,
is the correct
yeah.
pronunciation.
Rico and identity for future generations. That's the question.
Okay. Securing, so some of the aspects which we discussed about, like uh, while earthquakes and while floods and things like that, how we can ensure the safety of the object, those preventive conservation can be taken. But see, in sense of to answer sir's question, there's a limitation to any kind of answer I will give, because first of all, to ensure safety during, maybe in times of conflict, or in times of an immediate danger of earthquake or floods or things like that, normally people would try to save themselves first, and then they will think about the object. So the only way to ensure is to have any kind of digitization or documentation or an inventory which we can retrieve on a later or in future. That could be one solution to the problem. I hope I have answered the question, because when there's a conflict or anything happening, we only try to save ourselves, we don't think about anything else. So if we have a record, a digitized record, or a documentation, or like photogrammetry, 3D documentation, things like that, then probably that can be one of the aspect of saving the object and making it available for the future generation.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. So, Manali, do you want to read your question by yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So, before I ask my question, first of all, thank you, ma'am, for the very insightful and engaging lecture. And you brought out the wide range of threats, including natural disasters and conflict and fire and biological damage that endanger our heritage. And you reminded us how crucial that preparedness and informed conservation are in safeguarding heritage. So, thank you for that, ma'am. My question is there an ethical framework that helps us decide which sites or objects get priority when resources are limited, especially in a country like India, when people are struggling? How do we allocate resources to heritage conservation, and which heritage remain takes priority?
Mostly world heritage sites are given priority, but then again, there are many objects also in museums which are like, for example, the dancing lady from the Indus Valley civilization. These they are all of priority, but there UNESCO has also a list of now they are also having a list of things which can be done during war or conflicts or any kind of disaster, because the world has been seeing a lot of damages to cultural heritage because of disaster. So there is a protocol in place, but the thing is, applying it in a place, or like where help cannot be reached for humans also, it becomes a challenge. So having a protocol and then putting it in place or making it actually work becomes the challenge. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. My next question is connected to that exact point. So we know that international law recognizes destruction of heritage as a war crime. But
Right.
how effective has the enforcement really been? That was my question. I know you have
Hmm.
partially answered that in your previous answer, but if there is anything more to add to this.
Well, international law does restrict, or they say it's a war crime, but then there are places also where we cannot do much about it, where international laws are not put into value, or they are not even taken seriously. For example, if we talk about that, it goes politically, but again, then the Bamiyan Buddhas and all of those sites, and even in many areas, it happens that a particular, it comes into certain political aspects also, where the particular there is an ideology, and that is not every community, or every like every country, every community, everybody has a set of ideologies, and they differ from the other person. And when it is not acceptable by the community which is in majority, or which is in power, or whatever situation they are, the international laws are not much valued, because their human beings are not being valued. Then cultural heritage is the secondary at that stage. So it's hard to explain how we can save, because even that is also a question which I also have in my mind. Like, how can we, when we are thinking about saving ourselves, how can we save cultural heritage from all of these situations?
Thank you, ma'am.
Uh, so we have another question by Bodh Gaya is the name of the person who has, asked the question. Question is, if something like a monument is destroyed, can it ever truly be restored, or is it lost forever?
I have to say it is lost forever, even though I'm a conservator and I say that everything can be restored or everything can be conserved. But the thing is, the intellectual history, or the knowledge of that particular era, which was involved in making that structure, or making that site, that cannot be recreated. We may document it, we may know what is the material, we may know what the technology is, how it was designed, how the rooms look like, every kind of documentation can be there in place. But the way it was truly made, the essence of it may not be replicated, because we have a lot of replicas. For example, when we visit, these days it happens a lot now, when we go to like even maybe for example, the Durga Puja pandals also, we see that there is a representation or some kind of maybe stupa, Sanchi stupa, it would be something like that. Every detail would be perfect, everything would be made into perfection, but then again, you don't feel the essence of it. So in any case, once it's the ship of thesis theory we have, can the ship truly be the origin, called as the original ship of thesis, or because its parts are been from different places and everything has been changed, whether it can be truly called a new one, or it's the old one itself. In the same way, the essence would not be we would not be able to recreate it, because the emotions, the uh, material may be closer, but even for that matter, these days we don't get the similar materials. Even though we say organic and everything, the materials are not truly the same as we our ancestor used to build it or make it. So those things are there. So I'd say uh, visually it may be, but with an essence it may not be able to be restored completely.
I just want to add a single example over here.
Hmm.
If we see in textile industry, now there is a concept that reviving the ancient or old versions of prints or sarees also in silk. But still, if we see the sarees of our grandmothers or great grandmothers, which are still preserved in our house, it cannot be matched at all. Even the weight of the silk sarees which they used to wear and the current silk sarees weight,
Hmm.
it cannot be matched. Those were very very light, very smooth. uh, we are trying to, recreate it, but that, as ma'am told, of course it's not possible even in any other type of conservation also. Not only the monuments, but any other kind of heritage conservation too, I think it's not possible. Uh,
Indeed. So when we are conserving paintings or say textile from 200-300 years ago, we cannot have the same pigment or the same shade or the same medium. So that is true. And
exactly.
my next question is related to this only, restoration aspect of heritage. Is it always desirable if it is at all destroyed due to some man-made or some other natural calamity or something? Is it always desirable to restore heritage to its original state, or should traces of damage be preserved as part of its history because the damage has been done and it is there now? It is going to be a part of its history. Should we erase that those elements of damage completely, or should we keep those also as part of the history? That is my question.
I would like to answer it in two ways. As a, history student, I would say that the damage should be evident. No conservation. Conservation should be there. Conservation means just ensuring that it is stable and it prolongs. It would lead a long life. But we talk about restoration. Probably a historical object should not be restored to how it used to look like, because then like for example, I'm also a history student, and when we used to talk about objects that in this particular area or this particular archaeological find was there, and when we look at it, the archaeological find, probably the nose of the sculpture will not be there. So mostly noses of sculptures were kind of defacing. The activity was there where invader would come and then they would deface the maybe or the face of Buddha or something like that. So it's yeah, it's part of the history. So if some in books it is written, okay, this particular invader came and they destroyed the sculptures. So if you are going to recreate the noses and everything, so that part of that kind of invader had come and all that narrative or whatever the history is there, that's gone. So a historical object should not be, but if there is an art object or something which it is your personal collection, you are putting it in your wall, and there's some fungal stains, there's some loss or something, and it's a god's figure, and mostly we also do that. If there's a crack in a, or if there's a tear in a paper which has a face of god or something like that, our divinely figure, we don't want it to be in such a state that it looks unpleasing to the eyes, because we are praying to the god, or we have a picture in our mind, it should be pristine, something like that. Our emotions are in such a way. So if it's something, an art object which you feel that it's on your wall and you want to admire its beauty, so going into a restoration phase not be, because you are not looking at the history of it, you are now looking at the subject and enjoying the beauty of it as an art object, then restoration can be done.
Thank you, ma'am.
Uh, there is another question by Blood Drops is the name of the person. As ordinary people, is there anything we can do when we hear about heritage being destroyed?
um Now this is a very interesting question. That is also, see, I'm also working as a conservator, but I'm also an ordinary person, and when I hear about things like someone has stolen an object from the museum, then I also blame, okay, what were the museum officials doing, what had they what could have we done, or what could have the people around them done. We have all these questions, but what importantly we can do is, first of all, sensitizing and awareness. Those are the things which are in our hand, which we can do, because we cannot go after and find the person or do things like how, no matter how much passionate we are almost caught up in our own worldly problems. So we only thing which we can do at our end, for example, I feel what you guys are also doing, the history enthusiast is also doing, that is creating awareness and creating a kind of sensitization to the public. Like we are talking here, we are involved here, we are having conversation about safeguarding heritage. That means half of the thing is already done, that you guys are initiating. Nobody is worried about heritage and things like that when there's other conflicts happening, oil prices are rising, there is going to be inflation, these things are happening in our mind. But when we are talking about it, someone is at least aware or thinking in their mind that there is some kind of safety net or something has to be done for heritage. So for example, there are many while National Museum was being changed, the agency, the buildings were being changed, many people came in and put forward petitions. So these are some of the things which we can do at our end, where we can join forums or petitions which ensure safeguard or safety of cultural heritage or anything culturally valuable. So that is the maximum we can do. As a democratic country, we can put pressure on the people who are entitled or who are given the responsibility to ensure the safety of cultural heritage. That's the best we can use. So unity in number, the more people add on, the more people voice their concerns, then we can take it to the concerned person who can do something about it. Otherwise, individually we may not be that powerful, but as a group we may be able to do better things.
So I would like to add an example to this, a couple of examples. In fact, there is an ash mound in Karnataka near Ballari, this Kudatini ash mound. It was going to be destroyed because there was a construction of road going on in that area. But the locals, they were aware of the archaeological heritage because of professors who have worked there, such as Professor Kori Shettar and others. So they did activism. They put pressure on the authorities, and they stopped that construction, road construction, for a while, and then they planned it accordingly, and the roads now go around the ash mound instead of over it. So that way they could save the ash mound, and it is still there, and it is conserved properly now, so that we can go and visit. Similarly, there is a temple which I personally visited in Konnur, Parameshwara temple. The lintels of the stone lintels were broken. The local people, they came together, and they reached the authorities, and they got people involved who had power. They got the local MLA and MP involved, and now the whole temple has been dismantled and put together once again, and now it is conserved. So local people, by being aware, they can do this. They can come together, put pressure on the relevant people, and they can get some restoration or conservation done in that way. So I think that also goes a long way, because, as you said, ma'am, awareness is the most important thing here.
True.
Another threat which I have observed is that, Manali, sometimes the local people, what they do is they paint out these ancient or medieval era temples, and that creates a lot of problem while studying the iconographs or in fact inscriptions situated in the temple. So
Yeah, indeed. I think that is their way of, maybe ignorant, but their way of trying to conserve that temple from water damage or whatever else, from plants growing on it, or from moss covering it, or whatever. But
true.
if they are made aware of the damages that it does rather than the conservation part, then I think they will turn towards more scientific means of conservation.
Yes,
Again, awareness comes into play again there.
true, very true. So at
Yes.
grassroots level, someone has to do it.
We have to do it.
Yes, of course, we have to.
Yes.
So
That
shall we
is
take the
what
next question?
Yeah.
Uh, okay.
Okay. So yeah, this is my last question. I assure you. Can digital documentation meaningfully support physical reconstruction or conservation, or does it remain supplementary? Is it still not that helpful? Now we have AI. I know that sometimes AI can produce gibberish, or it can just fill in things which were not there. But how, to what extent can we use such things?
It do help. It's not just a supplementary document. It do help. For example, there was one. I don't know whether you have paid attention in that format. There was this wood and lacquer object which was there. So that there's a very interesting story to that. So basically, the client, he was transporting this object to somewhere in UK. He was from India transporting it to UK. So he entrusted a transportation company. So they gave this particular object to that transportation company. They were packed it up, and somehow when it reached the client, it was broken into many pieces. and that's because it's a lacquer and wood pulp which was mixed to make the object, and it was hollow, so there was no support within inside from it. So something must have, they must not have realized that it's hollow, they just have kept something over it, and then it broke. And so this was the first time when we received it. So we documented it nicely, piece by piece. It was a jigsaw puzzle, we put it together, we placed it, and we conserved, and we restored also, and then we gave back the object to the client. So he was very happy and everything. So we had the records and everything. And the next time what had happened is, the same client, he planned to take it from, I don't know what kind of misfortune he had with this object, he just decided to take it back to India again, and it's a parinirvana Buddha. So again, it happened that the head broke off. And we had a lot of recording of this, because we do digital photographic documentation, graphical documentation, written documentation, everything is in place. So unfortunately, at this time, he didn't give it, go to, it was not in Delhi, it was somewhere in Bangalore he was settled. So he went to the Bangalore center and he gave the object. And then, since this object was very much publicized in the articles, and like we used to, this was our poster child for all of the publications in a time period. So the Bangalore center realized that this object was already there, the client's details and everything, they inquired from that. So they had some pictures of the face and things which we could retrieve from our record, and we gave it to them. So that was kind of helpful for them. Even when it initially came in, there were some photographic records which the client gave us, so that helped us in reconstructing some of the facial features, the body features. We knew how the leg would be placed, how the fingers were positioned. So it do help us in like helping or reconstructing certain portions of the object. And photogrammetry, we also have photogrammetry for a jewelry box. It kind of helped us in understanding which piece will go where. So this kind of helps. I won't say it's a supplementary document, but it do help us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. So I have a question.
Mhm.
So how can a student who is studying history and archaeology at master's level post graduation can enter the career of heritage safeguarding or preservation? Because there is lack of awareness in the universities itself, in the
Mhm.
department itself. So what you want to say on that?
Okay, so it's not you have to do a master's course in conservation, then only you can become a conservator, or like a someone who does like conservation is a specialized field that's there. But then, if you want to safeguard cultural heritage, it need not be like you have to do a conservation aspect. Then only you would become or you would be safeguarding heritage. There are other ways also, like digitization work is now being implemented or now being focused upon. So archiving, then restoring is also one part, then museum curator, then there are art historians also, connoisseurs also. So there are many aspects. So basically, knowledge is power, that's what I believe. Knowledge is power. If you have knowledge, then you have the power to do anything, and that includes safeguarding. So if you involve with museums or galleries, or if you study art history, then you know what artworks are there, what is the material medium, the different artists, the progressive artists, like the contemporary artists, and what are. So that knowledge you will gain, and that will help ensure in safeguarding the particular art form. Or like for example, you have already talked about the textile objects, or the silk, difference between silk and how your grandmother used to have the silk saris, and how it is different in make or different in feel nowadays. So you know it because you are working on it, and you're also having interest in history. So there's something in you which can make out that difference. So when you have knowledge regarding any kind of material, then conservation or safeguarding history also becomes a very important, or like you can contribute in that. So things like being archivist, or like the National Museum of Archive also have a course in studying archive or reprography. Then National Museum Institution has courses in history of art, museology, conservation. Delhi Institute of Heritage Management, I think it's called as Bhim Rao Ambedkar Research Institute. I'm forgetting the name of that course, but it used to be Delhi Institute of Heritage and Research Management. So DHRM used to, they also have this course on conservation, MA Archaeology. ASI has course, MSU Baroda has courses. So many, IGNC has many short-term courses. So these are their courses where we can go and specify specifically either in art history or conservation, whatever your preference is, museology, that you can study, and then you can work in the field of safeguarding history or heritage.
Thank you, ma'am. My last question is: can you just put briefly a light on how the recruitment procedures will be, so that youngsters who are watching it, they will get an idea.
Recruitment process of people for conservation.
Yeah, for the conservation profession.
Okay, normally master in conservation is preferred. So I have studied from National Museum Institute. Now it is known as Indian Institute of Heritage. So apart from that, there are many other institutions also. Not only in India, outside India also there are institutions which masters or with specialization in conservation. So basically, when we talk about specialization in conservation, that is because you are going to deal with materials and you are going to do a curative conservation. So hand skills are very important in the field of conservation. So you can either have a fine arts background, you can have a history background, you can have a science background. So once these institution, you can join any of the institution for a master's degree in conservation. Once you join the institution, that's not the end of it. You studied and then you are out of the university and then you are a conservator. It's not like that. Then you have to identify places where you can work. So there are many private conservators. So I started my career with one of the private conservator, Mr. Giri Kumar. So he had one project in Jalgaon where some paper documents were being conserved. So I worked with many private conservators before joining Intact. So that is one place you learn a lot. And Intact having a multidisciplinary approach, because what is basically in our team, we have different people. So some people are from fine art background, some people are from science background, some are from history background. So we have a multiple set of skills on board. And when there is an object, for example, there is a metal object, and I don't have any expertise in metal. I have, my specialization is paper and wood. So someone from our lab, a senior conservator, a conservator who has expertise in metal, they would come and tell me, okay, this is a problem, this is how we address. And now it's been so many years, so I can work with any kind of medium. But the thing is, when you enter an institution or enter a firm, there is that there only you actually learn your hand skills and experiences. Once you start working with the object, then you kind of understand. The object keeps on telling you what I need, and you have to just follow what the object says to you. So that is how conservation works.
So basically, there is no entrance exam kind of system, right?
Entrance is there for National Museum Institute. It's been, I passed out in 2011. There was a entrance
Entrance
exam
exam.
there. I am
Okay.
not very sure about how it is. I think there
Now
is still entrance.
there
Yeah.
is. Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was really very enlightening lecture.
Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you, ma'am, for picking up so many different aspects of conservation and for giving us such detailed information on each of them. I'm sure that many of the viewers who have watched us and who are going to watch after the end of the stream are going to be inspired at whatever age, whatever field they are working in, to take up at least some level of conservation activity in their life, whether it is an old sari of their grandmother or an old object which they have found in their attic or something. But I'm sure that this has been very inspiring for everyone. It has been very inspiring for me personally, and thank you for that. And before we end the stream, I would now like to ask Nandan Shastriji, honorary president of the History Enthusiasts, to propose the vote of thanks.
Before I propose vote of thanks, let me state safeguarding cultural heritage from disasters and conflict is not merely about preserving stones and artifacts. It is a critical endeavor to protect humanity's collective identity, memory, and resilience. Whether threatened by natural disasters like earthquakes and floods or anthropogenic hazards such as war and looting, irreplaceable heritage requires proactive, multifaceted strategies. And Marine, you touch upon the impact of earthquake on cultural property. As my specialization is in seismology, the other uh, subsubject is tsunami. So in 2004, uh, there was a powerful tsunami. The epicenter was from Indonesia. And when the sea waves reached to Sri Lanka shore, they were as high as a three-story building, and one idol of Lord Hanuman, having 14 feet in height, swung due to the force of tsunami waves across to South Africa shore. But the archaeologists from South Africa came to know that this sculpture has come from Sri Lanka because of the inscription over there, and it was conserved properly in the laboratory before returning back to Sri Lanka. And another example, in our university museum, we received a gift from an artist from Jaipur, uh, paintings of Krishna Lila on two halves of tamarind seed. In spite of giving a chemical treatment, uh, there were some eggs inside. So we sent our object to Center for Cellulose and Molecular Biology lab in Hyderabad, and by gamma radiation, the eggs were irradiated. So this is also how the chemistry plays an important role in the conservation. Uh, Now, let me thank first of all Marin for a very insightful lecture, and the information which you imparted is very valuable, and the question and answers session was also very interesting. Uh, I also thank Nidhi and Manali for their role right from planning, and uh, it was Achal Pandyaji, my friend, who suggested your name, Marin, for today's lecture. So I thank Achalji also, and I thank the audience also for attending today's event of the History Enthusiast group. Uh, Thank you. Thanks to all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
And I also thank Nandan sir for always being this supportive to us and to all our endeavors and for bringing such wonderful resource persons to our platform. Thank you very much, sir. With this, we take leave, but we will very soon see you all again with something new, with something insightful, with something interesting. So stay tuned for that. If you have not followed us already, do follow us so you get the notification for the next event. Thank you.